Are you newer to trading card games or just very excited to see how your favorite champion is doing in Riftbound? Well, don't worry, because in this video series, I got you covered. We're going to be doing a full breakdown of every single legend as a more beginner-friendly guide, just talking about what they do overall and give you a sample list to get started with at the end. So if you're excited to see what your favorite champion is doing in Riftbound, look no further. But today we're talking about Jinx, so let's dive in. So yes, up first, we got to talk about Jinx and their signature spell. But starting things off, Jinx is a Fury and Chaos Domain legend, meaning you can only have the red and purple cards built in your deck, and every legend is also going to have a special ability. In this case, Loose Cannon Jinx has at start of your beginning phase, draw one if you have one or fewer cards in your hand. This is going to be a very heavy discard or more aggressive style of deck that wants to empty its hand and draw an extra card per turn so that you're able to get those last few points you need. Now, every legend also has a signature spell, as I mentioned. In this case, we have Super Mega Death Rocket. Deal 5 to a unit, but also comboing very well with what her strategy wants to be doing is when you conquer, meaning take control of a battlefield, you may discard one to return this from your trash to your hand. 5 damage removal spell that is also being able to recur over the course of a game is a very strong signature spell to come equipped with Jinx, because 5 damage is just going to hit a lot in this game. So if your opponent is able to maybe stick a key card to a battlefield that you just want to remove before you get into combat, and maybe they have a couple more tricks up their sleeves, definitely use Super Mega Death Rocket to clear the way and make sure you can get that point that you absolutely need. But also beyond that is that every legend has a couple cards that goes with it. So in this case, we have two versions of Jinx. One is going to be on the Fury side, and the other one is going to be on the Chaos side. So up first, we're going to talk about Jinx Demolitionist, a 3 energy, 1 power, 4 might unit. It has Accelerate, which means you pay 1 energy and recycle 1 Fury rune, means put it to the bottom of your rune stack, to enter Ready, which is a great way to get a little bit of acceleration going and making sure that it has haste in that regard, to use another trading card game term. And then Assault 2 gets +2 when it attacks, so it actually goes up to 6 might, which is very effective at crashing into what your opponent might be using to hold a battlefield. And then lastly, when you play me, discard 2. Now, we will talk about shortly about some cards that are either okay to discard or maybe even beneficial to discard, but keep in mind this mostly is meant to be as a tax or a technical downside to playing this card because it has so much power. But as we just previously mentioned, going down in hand size to activate Jinx's legend ability is by no means the worst part, so we are very happy to play this card. And then of course we have the purple variant as well, Jinx Rebel, 5 energy, 1 power, and 5 might. When you discard 1 or more cards, ready me and give me +1 this turn. So slightly slower by a full turn, and whenever you discard, you're able to ready it. So in this case, instead of paying the cost like you do in the red version, what you can do is play this card first, have a discard-like effect trigger, and then you can go into combat as well with this card at 6 might. So they do want to play slightly differently, but what's really important to note here is that for deck building considerations, you have to pick a legend and a champion unit that goes with it to start the game with. So in this case, you could have 1 copy of Jinx Demolitionist, and that's it. You could have 3 copies of Jinx Demolitionist and 0 of Jinx Rebel, or you can have 3 and 3 or 0 and 3, right? These cards count as individual for that regard, that you can have 0 to 3 copies, but at least one of them must be included in your deck as a deck building rule, because you need a champion unit to go next to your legend at the start of the game. So for today's video, we are largely going to be focused on the red version of Jinx, just because it is more straightforward and how it plays with the overall archetype, but there is absolutely going to be a case for the purple Jinx as well, with some more deck building considerations you might want to look into in the future. Now, moving on from there, with every deck, you also must have 3 different battlefields to bring to the game. Now, again, this is going to assume that you've at least started a how to play video and know at a very high level, but battlefields are effectively what the game revolves around, because you conquer them or hold them to gain a point, and the first to 8 points wins. So up first, we're going to have Zaun Warrens. When you conquer, discard 1, then draw 1. Now, while this does keep our hand neutral in that regard, as I mentioned, we are looking for more ways to discard, it still goes very well with our legend, because we are looking for cards that cycle through our deck and find a couple more key pieces, either be it removal that we really need, maybe we need that top end finisher, it just helps you churn through the deck and find maybe other those discard options that your hand might be a little bit clogged up with. So Zon Warrens, I think, is definitely going to be a staple. Now we're going to use the example of the Arena's Greatest here because Jinx is a more aggressive strategy, and this is just a great aggressive option for, well, any aggro deck in the format. At the start of each player's first beginning phase, that player scores 1 point or gains 1 point. So in this case, you just go up a point automatically, which is going to combo very strongly with a card we're going to talk about later. And then last but not least, this one is what I like to call more legend neutral, in that it's not really benefiting anyone in this regard, but Reaver's Row. When you defend here, you may move a friendly unit here to base. So it's a great way to keep your aggressive units alive after they've crashed into something. In this case, your opponent most likely retreated their own key card anyways, but it allows you to set up turns where you can put a very low investment to capture that battlefield, and then because you're playing Reaver's Row, you can immediately just go back to your base in the next turn so that you have more might to attack with on the following turn. Now, at the time of recording this, we are still missing, I believe, 8 battlefields off the top of my head, so something could take that third spot. But at least for where we are in the spoiler season, I am very confident to say that Zon Warrens and the Arena's Greatest, if you're playing the Draven card that we're going to talk about later, are the two of the 3 staples that you'll look forward to for your battlefields. And then really that third one could change a little bit. Now, of course, we got to talk about discard. What are we using to enable that legend strategy that we care about? And really, what's the benefit to them, right? We don't want to just discard to lose cards out of our hands. So there has to be some other type of benefit in a way. So up first, we have Chemtech Enforcer, which is a 2 energy, 2 might unit, which might read a little bit lower for what we want in this style of deck, but it has Assault 2, meaning that it's actually going to go up to a 4 might attacker, which is quite strong. But again, when you play me, discard 1. We'll talk more about discarding cards here shortly, but it is something that gives us a might boost, as we mentioned. Of course, then we have the Jinx Demolitionist, which we mentioned up front. When it comes into play, you discard 2 cards, but again, it's able to go up to 6 might. It is very aggressive with the accelerate keyword as well. That allows us to, play it ready and then just attack into a base at 6. And then also, I gotta give another shout out here to Super Mega Death Rocket, which is also going to technically be a discard effect, but really just wanting to stress again that it goes very well with Jinx because we want to be conquering battlefields and being more aggressive. So there are going to be multiple turns where we're able to loop this back and have it be a discard outlet for us, that maybe our hand is clogged, maybe we're just trying to get down to lower count so we can activate Jinx's legend ability. There's a lot more scenarios around it, but having a 5 damage removal as you start to play the game will just turn out to be very, very strong. So we're happy to have this as an option that can come back turn after turn. But you might be wondering, okay, it can't just all be discard, right? We can't just be giving up cards every single turn. And you would be correct. There are cards that are either payoffs for discarding or something that is just a free discard and that we're going to get back. So much in a similar way with Super Mega Death Rocket, although I always recommend holding it and using it first to get it into your discard pile, we have the Immortal Phoenix, a 3 energy, 1 power, 3 might unit with Assault 2. So again, a more offensive option that's very great to use for a low cost. But this one's interesting because when you kill a unit with a spell, you may pay 1 energy and 1 Fury Rune to play me from your trash. So this is a great discarding option because we want to get this back later anyways. It is a little bit expensive to loop back in this regard because we don't want to be paying too much power up front unless we have seals in our deck, which can help a little bit, but still set us back, half a turn when we play them. Immortal Phoenix is a great tool for just applying constant pressure to your opponent. And again, we are very happy to always have this as a discard option, knowing that we are going to safely get it back. Now, for those that maybe played Legends of Runeterra or just very familiar with the previous version of discard aggro, well, Flame Chompers is back. It is a 3 energy, 3 might unit that says, when you discard me, you may pay Fury to play me. So this goes straight into play as you're discarding it. It is just the key card that you always want to see because you're able to get a free body on the field, which is really nice when you're trying to be more aggressive and go wide on the board. Having multiple Flame Chompers come in when your opponent might not be expecting it can be very difficult to deal with. So in this case, it is just another card that we can play for free, well, for a Fury cost, I should say, but it helps us get ahead on the board. And then lastly, we do also have to give a honorable shout out here to Vi Destructive, which has ganking, which is really cool because it can move battlefield to battlefield, but the important part is the the final aspect there is recycle 1 from your trash to gain +1 might this turn. So Vi is also another great late game option, even if a little bit limited because you need to build up your trash first, but a lot of times you're able to line this up where you just really need to conquer a battlefield and you put 7 cards recycled back into your deck, and suddenly this is now a 10 might card that only costs you 2 energy and the turn prior to play it. Vi is a very real threat, and that you can also use this when going with the ganking keyword that we just mentioned and hopping battlefields. So Vi is a great card to combo with Jinx in terms of having another option for all of those cards you discarded and recycling them back into the deck. Vi again being a just overall great low cost unit, and also keeping in mind that early on, if you have a lot of the discard cards, sometimes it's totally just fine to make this like a 5 or 6 might even card, just to make sure you're getting that, early to mid game conquering in against your opponent when they just thought they were safe to defend, and then Vi can give you that little extra might that you need. So knowing how to use Vi and when to use the ability in this deck is definitely going to be very important, but one that will definitely come in time overall. Now, something also to mention is that because we are in Fury and Chaos, and there's also a 8-card sideboard that is in this game. Generally speaking, in Fury, we have even more damage-based removal options. In this case, we're just going to give a shout out to Get Excited, which does allow you to discard a card and then deal that much damage based on its energy cost. So this could be great for discarding Immortal Phoenix and getting a little bit more damage in. And then on the other side, we also have Chaos with Rebuke that just returns a unit to the battlefield owner's hand, but it does cost 2 power, which can be quite expensive. Something to keep in mind is that there are going to be a lot more cards revealed at the time of recording this, but just for the general spirit of things, I wanted to make sure that I included a note here about, well, there being a sideboard to begin with, and then just some other cards that you might want to consider when looking into Jinx overall. If we're expecting a more, lower to the ground, heavy aggro meta, then Get Excited can be really good because it can allow us to draw extra cards and maybe pitch that Flame Chompers that we don't need. Or on the other hand, if we're expecting a much more like Go Tall, Volley Bear, heavy late game style of deck, well, Get Excited's not going to be enough, but you could still rely on Rebuke and just bounce a card back to your opponent's hand to hopefully give you a turn to stabilize, or maybe if they're trying to desperately hold that last battlefield that they need, you're able to Rebuke it and just conquer and win the game on the spot. So Rebuke is very strong for what it wants to be doing, but it is quite costly with the double chaos power requirement here. So what about the Mulligans, right? So I want to at least figure out some way to at least do an intro level to these video series as well, because players might not be familiar with the Mulligan rules, or you might just be sitting down in your first game and curious of what to look for, right? So something to reiterate and highlight again is that the Jinx Demolitionist, you will just start the game with effectively. It goes next to your legend, and at any time you can play that card as if it were in your hand. So you technically have a 5-card starting hand in this regard, but for those who maybe haven't seen our gameplay video, or just as a refresher, you can only mulligan 2 cards from your hand, meaning you take 2 cards from your hand, put them to the bottom of your deck, and then draw 2 new ones off the top. And so the question then becomes, well, what are we looking for with Jinx, right? We are primarily looking for ways to empty our hand or be very low to the ground and aggressive so that we can really lean in on that legend ability as quickly as possible. So 2 to 3 drops are great. Now, you don't always have to rely on, for the example we've been using in this video, Chemtech Enforcer, to always discard right from the go. Sometimes just a Legion Rearguard is more than fine. We want to play this card for its Accelerate. We want to get those couple early Conquerors in to power up our Draven that we are showcasing here now finally. So that's also fine. You really are just trying to be the more aggressive deck, and sometimes holding a Mega Death Rocket can be okay as well, depending on the matchup overall. I would say just for how good it is, feel free to keep it in your hand, knowing that it's also a card that we can discard and get back later if we want, but I really want to put the focus here on the more low-to-the-ground aggressive strategy. And then, of course, for Mulligans, it's pretty much going to be whatever your high top end is going to look like. Draven Showboat is a great card as a finisher because it can go up to a 10 might for only 3 energy. However, with the Jinx deck in particular, we are drawing a lot of cards over the course of the game thanks to her legend ability. So because we are most likely going to be running 3 of these anyways, if one pops in your hand early, just go ahead, send it to the bottom. You're most likely going to see at least one other copy based on the fact of how quickly you will be able to draw extra cards from your deck, because it's only a 40 card deck at the end of the day, or I should say 39, because one of them starts with your legend. But I think things like Draven and the higher top end costs are absolutely fine to mulligan. And so lastly, you might be wondering, well, what does a list look like, Cosmic? Well, here you go. Again, as I mentioned at the end of every single one of these videos, I will also have a starter list for the legends. And something, again, I do want to stress is that all these are meant to be more starter-friendly intros to what the archetype wants to be doing. So these might change a little bit more in the future, but I'll try to make sure that they are at least, always 3 ofs, just for the sake of consistency where it makes sense. And then because we have a 39 card deck, it does make it a little awkward, right, for what the extra card is, or I should say 40, right, because of the champion unit. But we have a 1 of Misfortune, which is really just because it's effectively the 4th copy of Sneaky Deckhand, which is a great acceleration piece for just conquering a open battlefield, and once again, giving you that point early. So if you love more aggressive strategies and you love the kind of minigame of discarding the right cards at the right time to get the most value out of Jinx, then I think this is a great option to start the game with. I think Jinx in general is going to be a very interesting champion to see where she lines up for the red version versus the purple version. I think the Legend's good overall. We just have to wait and see where the rest of these spoilers come in at. But for where we are today, I think just overall, this list is, even 2 weeks from now, it'll be just a good enough starter list for a lot of people. So definitely start with it, and let me know your thoughts on how you might want to change the list or other key cards that you might be excited for. So hopefully you all enjoyed this video. Like I said, we are going to be doing one for every single legend that is joining us in Origin. So 15 more to go that I'll try to knock them all out in the next 2 weeks. We'll see how that goes. But I at least want to start with Jinx and, start a new video style project. So hopefully this all worked out well. But until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.